I'm no award-winning power lifter, but I still performed an incredible feat of strength today. I watched 3 episodes of She-Hulk. I know. Get your oohs and ahs out of the way. I'm like a circus freak here. How can Charlie do that? You know, what, is he a superhuman? Are you kidding me? 3 episodes of She-Hulk in one sitting? That's right, and I only dozed off once. I'm not lying, this isn't clickbait. I really did watch every episode back to back to back. Call me a hero, call me a villain, call me crazy. But I pulled it off. I did. I must have some kind of unique mutation in my own body that enables me to do these kind of things. It's kind of like in the show where Hulk mentions their bodies metabolize alcohol at a much faster rate than normal people. I have that power, but with not good TV shows. I'm sure you've all heard by now, but Marvel's released yet another TV show. It's She-Hulk. And it hasn't been doing that well. In fact, it's been doing pretty awful. Most people on YouTube and Twitter are insulting it and making fun of it. It's really catching more shit than a porta potty toilet seat in a construction site. If you only looked at YouTube titles about this show, you'd probably believe that this show somehow gives you gamma radiation just from watching it. It has been getting absolutely fucking slammed and jammed. And I wanted to watch it to see if it really is as bad as everyone's saying. And I just want to make this video giving my opinions on it so far. I've been very upfront and honest. I don't like the Marvel TV shows. The only one that I've liked is Loki. All the other ones I find just a tedious chore to watch. It's just the same formula every fucking time. And it's not just the TV shows, the movies are now following the same formula, and I'm just tired of it. Every character is quippy and quirky and joking back and forth, and nothing interesting is really happening anymore. So I've just completely lost interest in it, but I did want to give this series a fair shake and form an opinion on it, and that's what I'm going to do here, just share my thoughts on it. So right away, the show's not the worst thing ever created, but it's not good. This is a very sub-mediocre show. The biggest crime this show commits is being boring. There is nothing interesting that's happening in this show whatsoever, nor is there even any hints of anything interesting around the corner. It is very much like a CW show, visually and in terms of its writing. The CGI in this just absolutely broke my heart. I could feel the carpal tunnel, the over-exhaustion from the workers that are forced to work on the CGI for yet another Marvel show. It is clear through their work that they are tired. They need a break, because they're not even fucking trying. Like in the very first episode, a fucking spaceship, floats down and it looks awful. It actually looks like an Adobe After Effects tutorial on YouTube. It is not good, and that level of CGI persists throughout the remaining 2 episodes. I really think they are just overworking their teams now, and they're just constantly like pumping shit out, and they can't keep the quality there. Because obviously, they're being stretched so thin. So that's an immediate complaint that I'd like to put out there, but let's talk about a lot of the big things people are focusing on Twitter. The first one was a very viral clip from episode 1 where Jin, She-Hulk, is talking to Bruce, and Bruce is talking about how she needs to control her emotions so that way she doesn't freak out and go Hulk form and kill people by accident like he's experienced, right? So she took great offense to that, saying something along the lines of, "I'm great at controlling my emotions. When I get catcalled on the street, or when men try and critique me in my area of expertise, I'm always having to control my emotions and my anger, and I do it much better than you, Bruce." Which is just really fucked up to belittle Bruce. I don't know why she would say that, or why the writers would put that in there as a slap to Bruce. A character with by far the most trauma in the MCU. Most recently, he just lost the love of his life, and he has the only canon suicide attempt in the MCU. It's totally fine to highlight Jin's problems and things that she's experienced that make her upset and all of the legitimate issues she has, but why then make it a competition of who has the most trauma and say I control anger better than you, Bruce, I have it worse than you, Bruce. That's so fucked up. It's downright disrespectful. So there's a reason why a lot of people were mad about that clip, and seeing it in the context of the show does nothing to make it better. It's still the same awful garbage. Now, the rest of the episode is just boring. It's not very interesting, and they set Jin up as a very unlikable protagonist. Her whole attitude is, "I'm better than you in every single way, Bruce, and I'm just going to keep insulting you." That's all she really does for episode 1. Bruce is doing her best to try and help her, train her, and all she does is shit on him for it, and then constantly turn everything into a pissing contest. It's silly. if you're trying to make people not like She-Hulk, they're doing an absolute amazing job. They're fucking crushing it. Like, this is a smashing display of how to make a protagonist people root against. My biggest complaint by far with this show is the writing. I really just can't stand it because it's very generic Marvel. Everything is superseded with a joke or some kind of quip constantly. Now, I get it. Comic book fans had a whole bunch of copium about this show, like, well, actually, She-Hulk in the comic books is very wacky and zany. She's always making jokes, so it makes sense that her show would be more comedic in tone. And that's fine. Like, that's great. I'm super happy to hear that. But I am so tired of it. Legitimately, the last thing Marvel needed was yet another comedy. Everything they make is a comedy. I don't think there's any lunatic out there that was just like, oh man, I really like Marvel movies and shows, but they're just a bit too serious. I wish they'd give us something a little goofier, you know, a little lighter. None of the characters left in the MCU have their own personalities anymore. They're all following the exact same formula. Every single character is a jokester. They're always fucking joking. And it's like not good jokes. It's just like the most obvious cookie cutter recycled garbage over and over again, just being refed constantly. Like, just so tiresome. I can't help but roll my eyes. Even the villains now are just kind of like an extension of the heroes in that they're always joking. Like, nothing is being taken seriously to even the slightest degree anymore, it feels like. Even the fucking Abomination, who's in this show, is just another clown. Like, he's just making jokes constantly. Talking about writing haikus as well as his 7 soulmates and this and that. Like, it's just too much. It's like going into a middle school classroom during a substitute teacher where every student's trying to make like the best joke all at once and they're all terrible. It's fucking, it's painful. And I get it, this show's supposed to be more comedic because it's certainly not focusing on any kind of like action or like a bigger world building so far. This is a very self-contained unit that has other elements from the MCU like Wong, Abomination, Bruce, but it's very much just like a sitcom with them. It's not like a law drama, so they're not focusing on any part of her being an attorney. Like, yes, it's here, but it's very rudimentary. It's not like anything super compelling. It's really mainly just following She-Hulk as she makes jokes with people around her and becomes a superstar. And now they've brought in like so many other super powered people. There's a tiny little side plot where one like chauvinistic asshole was dating a shape-shifting elf from Asgard who was disguising herself as Megan the Stallion, and now he's suing her for it, and you know, Jin's used in court to testify that that guy's a chauvinistic asshole who's so delusional he thought it could have been the real Megan the Stallion. It's all just so fucking dumb. And this is where another big viral Twitter clip comes in of people making fun of the show. At the end of that episode, that's episode 3, there's a post-credit scene where She-Hulk is twerking with Megan the Stallion. And yeah, you know what? It's pretty cringe, but it doesn't bother me. I don't care. It's a post-credit scene. Let them have fun. I don't know why people are making a big hoopla about it. Like that, I have no gripes with that whatsoever. You know, it's not something that had me giggling or getting hype, but I wasn't like upset by it. I wasn't mad about it. I mean, plenty of post-credit scenes in Marvel have been really fucking silly too, so I don't think there's anything super different about that. It's just the whole show itself isn't very good. To me, this whole show just feels soulless, just very robotic and by the numbers, as if they just took a random character from Marvel and plugged them into an MCU media algorithm and it pumped out this entire script in a day. All just written by AI, all just very formulaic. It feels like there's no passion behind it. It just feels like it was made because they need to keep making Marvel stuff to keep people subscribed to Disney+. So they just pump out as much as they can, as quickly as they can, for as many characters as they can to keep that train rolling. There's just nothing at all happening right now. At the end of episode 3, she does get into a bit of a fight, a little scuffle, which is the first fight of the show outside of episode 1. And it's against just 4 no-named nobody henchmen in an alley. And they're wielding crowbars and a mace and like a needle. And there's little particle effects coming off of them. So she easily dispatches them by just doing this. It's kind of like a Detroit urban survival training course where Dale's telling you just like how to tackle 5 assailants all at once, where you just go in a circle and like slap their back. That's how she fights. You know, obviously she overpowers all of them. She's the fucking She-Hulk. But, like, they couldn't have at least made the fight a little more interesting. Like, they'll hit her with the mace, she doesn't feel it, and then she just slaps to the side, or throws to the side, or throws up, and like, that's it. It's just, the action's not fun to watch. There's no, like, drama, there's no stakes, there's nothing besides just jokes. And I just really think that's really run its course. It's not very entertaining. Maybe it'll get better in the next few episodes, I couldn't tell you, but I don't really see where it goes from here. They're trying to set something up because the bad guys at the end there say, you know, the boss isn't going to like this or whatever. So it's trying to maybe set something up, but it's just not interesting. Yeah, anyway, that's really like my full thoughts on the show so far. I'll probably finish it just to see where it goes, if it goes anywhere at all. But yeah, anyway, that's about it. See ya. In life, you're always going to make mistakes. The most important part is how you handle it after. But I pray you never make a mistake as big as I did when it came to the moist meter for Morbius. I gave Morbius a shockingly low 15%. And I think it's because I just didn't understand the movie at the time. There's really a lot of themes and subtle vicissitudes with the film that a lot of laymen just might not get on the first watch, which is why today I revisited the film, and now I really understand why this has become the highest grossing movie of all time. My third eye's truly been opened, and Dr. Michael Morbius has entered my body like the Holy Spirit and shown me the light. I have been morbed. I see how wrong I was with my initial grading of the film, and if I could go back and change it now, I wouldn't give it a 15%, I'd give it a 15,000%. I still lie awake at night with cold sweats remembering that 15% that I gave this film. Probably the biggest crime I've ever committed and the most embarrassing, shameful moment of my life, and absolutely my biggest regret. If I won the lottery today and then lost the ticket, my biggest regret would still be giving Morbius a 15%. And I just want to deeply apologize to all the mega morbers out there. You deserved a better review, and I just didn't provide. But today I'm correcting that mistake, and I'm going to talk about why I think this film is so powerful and just important in general. I would honestly argue that the creation of the Morbius film is just as important as the discovery and use of penicillin in our society. It just completely changed the game for us. It's more than a movie. It's a Morbi that's not afraid to challenge the audience and make them reflect on their own lives and teach us that anything is possible, and to confront your hardships with the utmost Morbius attitude. You see, in the film, Dr. Michael Morbius was dealt a bad hand in life. He was afflicted with a disease that didn't allow him to morb. But thanks to his intellect and his no-quit, can-do attitude, he was able to develop a remedy, and god damn it, he started morbing. When I first saw the beautiful scene, I didn't really grasp the magnitude of the situation. I was pretty much alone in the movie theater, and I think that's because people fear what they don't understand. And Morbius is a movie that will drag you kicking and screaming into the light and show you things that maybe you're just not ready for. You know, watching Morbius is a lot like taking bath salts, except it gives you permanent superpowers and the feeling lasts forever. You become a changed person, an improved, evolved human being upon finishing the Morbius film. Now, the scene when he begins morbing, I think, is one that will stand the test of time, and we'll look back on generations from now as the lightning rod that showed us what we're capable of. When I rewatched the film today and he started his first morb, I couldn't help but pump my fist and just cheer him on with tears in my eyes. It was just so good. I was more emotional watching that scene than I was when I lost my virginity. It's something that is an indescribable euphoria. Now, I'm sure you've seen at least a few Morbius memes, but I'd like to share with you what I believe to be the best one. This is "The devil shivers when a clown starts morbing." This, of course, references Jared Leto's iconic performance as the Joker in the Suicide Squad movie, while also showcasing his talent with the Morbius film. I would say, though, that Jared Leto does not portray Morbius. Morbius himself used Jared Leto like a fucking fleshlight in order to tell his story on the screen. We're not watching an actor. We're watching a possession. We were invited to go on a 2-hour non-stop high-octane adventure with the real Morbius. I bet there wasn't even a script for this movie. The real Morbius just showed up on set after taking control of Jared Leto's body, and they started filming. And everything that happened from that point forward was authentic and genuine, and there's so much we can learn from it. I really only have one complaint about this movie, and it's the fact that it's not long enough. This movie could have gone on for 6 hours and I'd still be screaming for Morb. I just want this movie to go on forever. I wish Morbius was a live stream that never stopped. Honestly, this just feels so good to finally correct my mistake with my initial assessment of Morbius. And I do want to again apologize to all the mighty Morbin Power Rangers out there that saw this film for what it was. And I was just blind to it at the time, but no longer. I am happy to finally get all this out there. And in the words of the great Dr. Michael Morbius, a Morb will do what a Morb does. Autobots, roll out. God, I still can't stop thinking about the final fight in this movie, the climactic showdown between Dr. Michael Morbius and the villain. It is perhaps one of the most beautiful action sequences ever captured in the cinema. It is a flying vampire fight between two Morbs, and the bad guy says, "It's time to eat your vegetables, Michael." And I swear to God, without missing a beat, Morbius says to the guy, he says, "Vegetables aren't on the menu tonight, bub. Tonight, it's freedom and blood." Right before delivering an axe kick super crane power punch right to the bad guy, killing him instantly. And then he becomes a bat and flies away. It's just a delight. Now, I do want to go into a little bit more detail on something outside of the film here. I think it is absolutely fucking wild that a movie has been carried by memes this hard. The movie seems to have turned a profit, at least off its initial production budget. I don't know if it actually made money considering marketing, but the fact that it's able to generate something even close to positive revenue blows me away, because this movie is absolute dog shit, and the only reason why people saw it was to make fun of it. For the first week or so, every theater was completely empty, mine included. No one cared about this movie until the memes arrived, and they were some high quality dank shit posts for sure. So it got people at least interested enough to go pay a couple of bucks to sit in an empty theater to watch it, just to see how bad it was. And it's a pretty boringly bad movie. It's not like an entertainingly fun bad one. It's just a pretty stale shit show. And I think that's why the memes slap so hard. They were just hitting different because this movie is so bad. It's like cheering on a train wreck. It's like you make a joke out of it, but it's still a terrible, terrible thing that you're witnessing. That's what it's like for Morbius. And with so many memes coming out around it, like the audience score being 2,000% and all of that, and it's made $352 trillion, all of it contributed to getting people at least somewhat interested in being a part of the joke. So somehow, memes were able to carry this colossal flop into a position where it almost made a little bit of money, which is both amazing and sad at the same time. But I think the best thing that can come from this is a Morbius sequel. Because if they're just looking at pure numbers, yeah, it didn't do great by superhero standards, but it still made like $150 million, which was more than they spent on production. Of course, again, doesn't account for marketing, but still. I mean, that's not bad. That's not awful. That might be enough for a sequel, and god damn it, I think it's what this world deserves. I would love to see a Morbius 2. And this time, I hope it's 6 times as long as the first one. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit today because the Morbius memes are still popping. They're still extremely popular memes, which is blowing my mind because the movie's already been out of theaters for like 3 weeks, it seems. So the memes are still persisting, and I'm very curious to see how much longer those go before it gets drawn out and tiresome. But I guess we're not at that point yet. That's about it. See ya. Madam Web is a movie a lot of people wrote off pretty quickly. The trailers are abominable. Let's not, beat around the bush here. And the press tour that Dakota Johnson went on, who was the lead for this film, was a real head scratcher because she just openly seemed to despise the film with the way she talked about it. One of her interviews, she's like, yeah, I don't even know if the movie's good. And spoiler alert, turns out it wasn't. So maybe she really can see the future because she knew this one was a super stinker. This movie is a straight up clunker. And this film was produced by some of the best in the business, Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. Those might not be household names, but I promise you're familiar with their work. Their resume is nothing but heaters. Dracula Untold, Last Witch Hunter, Gods of Egypt, Power Rangers, Morbius, and Madam Web. They are, without any exaggeration, undoubtedly the Kobe Bryant and Shaq of producing dog shit movies. They only write horrible garbage, and somehow they keep getting worse. Now, I wouldn't say this film is worse than Morbius, but I would say it's just as bad. It's not better, it is just exactly the same as Morbius in terms of how dog shitty it is. So it's really impressive that throughout this decade of Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless working in Hollywood, they have somehow found a way to start awful and find new ways of getting worse at it, and then accidentally making the Power Rangers movie that was at least pretty decent. I didn't hate that one. But everything else, everyone hates for the most part. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about Madam Web here. So, I'm not clairvoyant, but I think everyone's going to dislike this one because there's almost nothing to like about it. The actors and actresses in here, they really don't seem to try very hard at all, save for a couple of scenes, which I think probably were some of the first scenes that were shot when the script was different. As I understand it, this script went through a lot of changes from when Dakota signed on to what eventually got puked out onto the big screen here. So I think some of the good scenes where like the performances are actually giving a shit about what's going on were probably from the original shoots before everything got cattywampus and ruined somewhere along this messy journey. But for the most part, you're not even really watching superheroes versus supervillains. You're watching zombies kind of just speak at each other occasionally. It's like you're watching performances from people that are sleepwalking through their lines. There's really no true effort. And it's clear from the very beginning of this film. I wrote notes in the beginning because I couldn't believe what I was watching, and then at some point I got hypnotized and stopped writing notes, and then at the very end, after everything had happened, the dust started to settle as it was like wrapping itself up in the last 2 minutes, I just instantly fell asleep. Like, I didn't even feel myself getting tired. My eyes just closed and I was out for like 3 minutes until Aaron, who went with me, was like, Charlie, you're sleeping. I was like, oh my god. I didn't even know. Like, my body shut down from like how confused I was that this movie even got made in the state that it's in. But anyway, very opening. This is in the trailer, that meme. He was with my mother when she was studying spiders right before she died or whatever. That line's not in there just like that, but it is in there in the same essence, just broken up. So from the very beginning, that bad guy Ezekiel's line is, I agreed to be your bodyguard because I thought you were close to finding the spider that can give us the superpowers if we can use its abilities. And I think I was paraphrasing because that was a few lines. She interrupted him at some point. But his first line is, I agreed to be your bodyguard because you told me you were close to finding the spider that's going to give us superpowers or something to that effect. And she's like, it's a very elusive spider because it's so powerful and gives all of these superpowers. Like, there's no dialogue in this movie that would ever be something a single human being would say to another in the real world. It is baffling that anyone signed off on it. Because these aren't characters, they're just plot point vessels and nothing else. No character here has any personality whatsoever, especially not the 3 spider women that Madam Web is protecting. They don't get any fleshing out whatsoever. They're basically just 3 characters that need to be saved just because, and that's it. There's no real reason for it. And Madam Web is a very interesting case study here because she's a paramedic, thus her whole career is saving people, yet when it comes to saving these 3 spider women, she tries her best to just dump them off onto their parents, which is basically just a death sentence because they're being hunted by evil spider guy. So, like, I don't know what she thought would happen there, like the parents just hit spider guy with a frying pan to defeat him or something, but she does not want any part of this responsibility at all, even though her career is fucking saving people. She wants nothing to do with actually saving them and reluctantly does so. But I'm jumping all around now, too. I'm so scatterbrained with how bafflingly bad this movie was. So anyway, like, even from the very beginning, it was clear that this dialogue was going to be terrible. But it somehow finds a way to get even worse than you'd ever expect it to be. But anyway, so after the mother finds the spider, she takes it to the camp and Ezekiel betrays her. He shoots two of the people. The mom goes, "Oh, jeepers, creepers, zoinks. What are you doing?" And she says, "I don't understand why." And then goes on to explain that this spider, if we can use its properties, can help people. And that's when Ezekiel, the main bad guy, gets his only amount of, even an iota of an attempt to give him a background story or any motivation or whatever at all. He says, "Not interested in helping people because no one helped me and my family when we were starving." And then he shoots her. That's all we ever get about him as a character. After that, he becomes bent on just killing the 3 spider women because he can't stop having nightmares about them killing him as like a prophecy that's going to happen in the future. We get nothing else about that guy at all. He is actually just cartoonishly evil beyond that. Nothing else. And he also fucking sucks at being a supervillain because he has like these superhuman abilities, but all he does is walk menacingly and crawl on the walls sometimes, and that's it. He at no point ever really seemed like a threat at all. Even for a second. There wasn't a single scene where I was like, "Oh shit, he's here. This is gonna be a tough one." Also, he can like poison people by like holding onto them, like gripping them tight. But other than his cheese touch and like the ability to crawl on walls, he doesn't really do much else as a supervillain, except whine. But anyway, I actually pretty much summed up the entire narrative here. The only thing I left out is how Cassie was born. So after the mother gets shot, it turns out she was pregnant, and the locals that were using the spider's venom for superpowers picked up the mother and then delivered the baby for her after letting a spider bite her, which of course gave Cassie powers, which didn't awaken until that accident that is now in the iconic viral clip that's gone around where, as a paramedic, she tries to save somebody and then the car ends up hitting the water and she bumps her head and now she can see the future, kinda. So, that's the origin of her power, and the narrative is she can see the future, and at one point she sees these 3 girls get killed by a spider guy, and he's a bad guy. She doesn't like bad guys, so she tries to save the girls from him, and then she's just on the run the entire time. And the spider guy wants to kill them because he doesn't want them to kill him. It doesn't get any deeper than that, really. It's very surface level shit, and that's kind of the entire narrative in a nutshell, with tons and tons and tons of awful scenes that make no sense at all. But I'm not even going to bother breaking those down for you because who gives a fuck? They didn't give a fuck when making it, so why should you, the audience member? I will say, though, this film, for being a superhero film, has no action at all. In fact, none of the superheroes even fight the bad guy. And they don't even wear a costume or anything at all until the very, last scene of the movie. The only thing you get for, a superhero showdown is in Spider Guy's visions, where he sees the 3 Spider Women, beat him up and then toss him out of a window. And that's a 30-second scene. After that, they never actually fight him at all. What happens is, when he shows up, Cassie hits him with a taxi cab at one point, and then that stuns him. And then he shows up again 30 minutes later, and then Cassie hits him with an ambulance, which stuns him. That's the extent of their fighting. The climactic final showdown, he basically beats himself. So Cassie's using her visions of the future and kind of positioning him where he needs to be for the environment to take care of him, because the environment's going up in flames. They did set up some traps to a certain extent, and they kind of give him obstacles to go through, but it's not really fighting him. It's kind of like Amnesia when you're running away from the monster, basically. That's how their fights go with the evil villain, until eventually the environment beats him, and then he gets crushed by a giant sign. It sucks. It sucks. This isn't a superhero movie or anything at all. This is a fucking slop fest, is what it is. It's not entertaining. Morbius, I would actually argue, was more entertaining than Madam Web, and that is saying something. But again, I don't think Madam Web is necessarily worse than Morbius. I still think they're about equal in terms of their shittiness. Another thing that's painfully obvious is that this movie did its absolute best to erase any and all mention of Spider-Man or anything in that universe whatsoever, and tried to keep all of that as minimal as possible, and you could actually feel some cuts where things were just scrubbed. So I truly believe the original vision for this film was something entirely different, and what we got is just a mess. And I'd like to give you a scene that I think perfectly encapsulates just how much effort went into this movie, like how much thought went into this movie at the end of the day. So while the three girls are hiding from Spider-Guy, and I should explain, Spider-Guy fucked an NSA woman and got her passcode to all of the cameras across the globe so that way he could track down the three girls from his nightmares. So he uses that technology to basically transfer his mind's eye image of these three women and get them in the real world, and he used the NSA computers to access all the cameras to real-time find them with his assistant. So that's how he's able to keep finding them. And Cassie and the gang knew that. They knew they needed to avoid cameras, and they eventually decided to go with Ben, who's Cassie's friend, and keep the three girls there while Cassie's doing some research of her own. And that's working really well. The three girls are at Ben's place. Spider-Guy can't find them, and that's all, great stuff. And then the woman staying with Ben has her water break, and she's about to give birth. So now they're rushing to get her to the hospital. And by they, I mean the entire kit and caboodle. The entire group, for some reason, decides to accompany Ben and the woman to the hospital. So all three girls now get in a car and take off down public roads and immediately get picked up by cameras because fucking obviously they would. Why were they going with them to the hospital? I have no idea. They could have just stayed at the house because that was clearly working. And I don't know if I didn't hear the reason why they went with them or if they just didn't even bother because they didn't think anyone would be awake long enough to even get to that scene. I don't know. But they could have just stayed at the house and been completely safe and avoided conflict with Spider-Guy if they had just stayed there. Which would have been the logical thing too, because why does Ben want these three teenage girls accompanying them to the hospital in the first place for the birth here? There's no logic to it. Why would you just fucking stay there? Just stay there and wait. But anyway, they don't. That's just an example of how little thought even really went into the movie. I just don't see what the point of making it even was anymore. It doesn't tie into anything Spider-Verse related. It doesn't want to. It really doesn't want to. And it doesn't really want to try to stand on its own two legs either, so why make it? I don't get it. It's just another blemish on the record of this screenwriting duo that keeps making trash. I like, after seeing it, I'm just kind of at a loss for words for what they expected the response to this one to be, because I really can't imagine anyone sitting down and enjoying it. The biggest sin this movie commits is that it's boring. It's really boring. If you're going to a superhero film, there's at least a couple of things you expect, like the basics of having fights at the bare minimum. Morbius, for all of its flaws, had fights. This doesn't even have that. There's none of that. It's just the worst dialogue ever, constantly, and nothing more. And somehow, even with all of this dialogue, you still learn nothing about the characters. They're still so bland because they don't even give them depth or try to. It's just constantly either saying not good jokes or just saying a whole bunch of fucking nothing to begin with. So anyway, to sum it all up, Madam Web, not good. Boo. Pretty stinky. If I was to plug it into the moist meter, I'd give Madam Web a 15%, I would say. But yeah, I wouldn't even call it like a fun bad movie. It was just bad. I don't know if this one's going to pop off with memes like Morbius did, because there's really nothing memeable about it other than really bad dialogue and nothing else. Yeah. But we'll see. Anyway, that's about it. So yeah. I actually got you with a classic prank. I wanted to mention one more thing. By the end of the film, Cassie finally, figures out how her powers work really well, and she immediately uses it to be annoying. So, at the end of the film, she ends up going blind to match her comic book counterpart, and she immediately starts seeing the future for everything. And the way she applies this is the three girls come over with some takeout food, and she's like, "Oh, thanks for the," and then lists the takeout food, and they're like, "How did you know that?" And she just smiles, "I saw it." And then she says, "Bless you," to one of them, and she goes, "What do you mean, bless you?" Achoo! Predicting her sneeze. So she's using it just to be annoying. That's so hype. I mean, amazing. I just had to mention that. Okay, now that's it. See ya. You know how everyone's been saying that Marvel's kind of fallen off? The quality of its shows and even its movies has just been dwindling to a point where it's not really exciting to see them anymore, and they're kind of stinky. Whoo-wee! Wait until you see the Marvels. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I mean this with no exaggeration. The Marvels is the MCU's messiest movie to date, and it's not even close. I actually can't even believe the movie released in its current state. It almost feels like this is internal sabotage from someone on the inside trying to sink the MCU and make it go even lower, because it's like nobody even bothered to watch what they were putting out there. I really thought Ant-Man Quantumania would probably be the worst modern Marvel movie we'd ever get. How wrong I was. It's like they took every single criticism that's ever been thrown against the MCU and said, "Oh, you thought that was bad, watch this," and then did all of it 10 times worse. It feels as though they shot 4 different films and then took some elements from each one, haphazardly threw them all together into this witch's cauldron here, bubbling over into this fucking potion that induces a headache in all of the spectators. This movie is fundamentally like 4 action sequences that are loosely strung together with the worst narrative the MCU's ever had, because it doesn't even try to develop the characters or their relationships. I'm gonna go ahead and get my only compliment about this movie out of the way right now. I've never seen the Miss Marvel show, so this movie was my introduction to Miss Marvel, and she is great. Both the actress playing Miss Marvel and even the character I think has so much potential in the universe. She is the only good thing about this movie. She fucking kills it. Miss Marvel is the only thing this movie does well, but it's not nearly enough to save it or even make this worth watching. It doesn't redeem the 150 minutes that get flushed down the shitter. So let's go ahead and dive in. The biggest mistake this movie makes is with its villain. The most forgettable villain in MCU history, the most underdeveloped villain in MCU history. I don't know how we're in 2023 with like fucking 15 years worth of MCU movies, and a big criticism was underdeveloped villains in some of the movies, and somehow this deep into the game, phase fucking 5 here, they deliver the worst villain they've ever had. I can't even remember her name. I have to keep looking it up and then I still forget it. That's how forgettable she is. I think her name is Danber. I looked it up again. Darbin. Her name is Darbin. Fundamentally, she is like Ronin if Ronin was written in 5 minutes. Like, all she does is she creates some portals that suck things up occasionally. And that's it. Spoilers, I'll tell you her motivation, and it's only explained in a couple of lines of dialogue. Instead of showing you, they just tell you. It really does feel like a lot of this was AI generated at the last possible second. I'm just gonna fucking say it. Basically, Captain Marvel made a decision that had a huge effect on the Kree and caused a lot of problems for them. Darbin, being one of the Kree, will do anything to try and save them. She hates Captain Marvel and thus wants to take things from her in order to help save the Kree, basically. And since this is only explained in a few lines of dialogue that feel almost like throwaway lines, there's no actual emotional investment here. Since they don't bother to flesh out Darbin at all, she becomes kind of like this villain caricature, this cartoonishly evil presence that's evil for the sake of being nasty. And even when Darbin and Captain Marvel are on screen together, there's still no emotional weight to anything that happens because they're speedrunning through shit and barely even attempting to make something cohesive. But she's not really a big threat, because they make it clear early on that the only reason she's not defeated easily by Captain Marvel is because the big gimmick of the movie keeps happening where they switch places when they use their powers. So Miss Marvel even says, like, I know you could absolutely just fucking clobber her if we would stop switching places, and I'm sorry about that. And she's right, because the main villain isn't very strong. And in fact, every time they meet her, they pretty much do defeat her until she just miraculously pulls out like a big force blast that opens up that portal at the last possible second. But even aside from just the super weak villain, this movie is tonally all over the place. The vast majority of the film doesn't take itself seriously. It's mainly like a Thor Love and Thunder fucking flat comedy where almost none of the jokes are landing. The worst offender is actually Nick Fury. Nick Fury has a prominent role here, but he's just literally a clown. I don't think he has a single line of dialogue in this movie that isn't a joke or leading into a punchline. Even when the stakes are super high, like, oh, we might, lose the world here if Darbin's plan goes correctly. And even when he's about to fucking die, he's making jokes the entire time. What happened to this character? It's not even consistent with the Nick Fury that we know, or the one that was in Secret Invasion, which I didn't finish because I didn't really like it that much. But this is not the same character. They replaced him with a goofball. Like I don't understand what even happened here. Almost every single scene outside of action is all over the place. It wants to be like this wacky, quirky, zany comedy, and then sometimes it wants to be like a drama, and then sometimes it wants to be more action-focused. It's at its best when it's doing action. I think some of the action scenes are pretty decent, though there are moments here where you can really feel the tears from the CGI artists that have to work on this. They are just overworked. The VFX department at Marvel, I can feel their pain through some of these scenes because a lot of them feel as though they didn't have time to actually finish it. I don't hold it against them. It's just the Marvel pipeline where they're constantly just fucking pumping shit out as quickly as possible without a care in the world. But there are some action sequences that look alarmingly rough in the CGI department. But for the most part, the action is pretty okay. It's pretty fun, especially the final fight is interesting, I guess. But it doesn't really matter that much because there's not a real movie around it. You're basically just watching a montage of some decent action moments, and that's it. So anyway, back to what I was saying. In between these action sequences, when it's trying to do a bunch of different things, it fails on all fronts. Let me give you an example. So there's a planet they visit, and it's a planet that means a lot to Captain Marvel. And the inhabitants of that world only communicate through song. If you just speak, they can't understand you. It basically has to be a musical. And I think it is the most insufferable sequence or series of scenes the MCU's ever had. It just doesn't make any sense. If this was a Rick and Morty sketch, fine. This feels like it'd fit right at home in some kind of Saturday morning cartoon special as a joke. But this comes in the middle of the film where things are getting desperate, where the villain's succeeding and this is a planet Captain Marvel really cares about, and it's about to get fucked in the ass. And it's okay, why are we having a musical here about this and not taking anything seriously? And even when they fail to protect it, 10 seconds later, Captain Marvel's joking. This is a place she called home 5 minutes ago. She fucking fails to protect it from Darbin, and she immediately just starts joking about it. And then the next scene, pretty much, they go into this whole cat subplot. This whole side quest with cats, and Nick Fury, and cats. It's all over the place. You can't take it seriously if the movie itself doesn't take it seriously and isn't actually held together by anything at all. There's no real substance here. The only time this movie even comes close to making an emotional beat work is between Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. They have a relationship that is loosely explored and only one time successfully gets across the weight of it. And that's through this sequence where they're seeing each other's memories. They all kind of tap into this thing that's showing memories, and they do a good job of setting up Captain Marvel and Monica there. But outside of that, anytime they try and explore that, they don't give it any real chance. It just falls flat again. They have one good emotional scene with that, and then completely forgot how to do it appropriately because they were too busy focusing on lame humor. And going into the film, I imagine a lot of you think that the switching of places is going to be integral to the plot. It's really not. It's used occasionally, but it doesn't even follow its own rules for the switching sometimes. They forget to switch. It's supposed to be when they, use their powers at the same time they switch, but there's multiple scenes where they both, or all three of them really, will use their powers at pretty much the same time and not switch. It's like they forgot that gimmick was even present sometimes. And it doesn't really play a role in the narrative outside of explaining why Darbin just can't be easily defeated by Captain Marvel. So while I think the concept could have been fun to explore, these three characters need to work together in order to overcome an overwhelmingly powerful enemy and somehow use this to their advantage, the ability to switch places. somehow they take that and just make it like, we'll utilize it sometimes, but it doesn't really matter. And even at the end of the movie, they just kind of throw it away. They just wipe their ass with it. They just say like, oh, we're not entangled anymore. It's like, oh, okay. Well, okay then. I guess so. It's like, come on. Like, I don't know what went wrong here. In its current state, the movie only works if you want to go and just watch some mindless action and then not listen to any of the dialogue or the story. Like, that's probably the only way you can get any amount of enjoyment out of it. Because like I said, some of the action is pretty good, but like, that doesn't make a movie. You still need more than that. And it's not like the action is anything new to the MCU. It's all still very generic for the most part. There's nothing new here, aside from new lows that it reached with how little it actually cared. And now I have no idea what they're even going to do with these characters going forward, because this movie did nothing to progress any of them except Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel, like I said, is the only component of this film that works at all. She is the only good part of this movie. Monica, I think, could have been great here. I think WandaVision was building up to Monica being a very strong and interesting character, but this movie just ruined it. They didn't let her do anything until the very end. I won't spoil that, but at the very end she becomes the most important character pretty much out of nowhere, because up until then, she didn't get to do anything. Like, they didn't develop her or even try, and it's such a shame. And I don't know what the fuck they're going to do with Nick Fury going forward. Maybe they'll try and explain away his behavior here as him being some kind of variant from an alternate universe or something that got fucking slapped into this movie. Because I don't know what the fuck their plan is. They turned him into comic relief, purely just comic relief and nothing else, which is such a wild decision. Anyway, plugging the Marvels into the moist meter, I'm going to have to give it like a 25%. It is the messiest MCU movie that has been made. I think I can comfortably say that. I'm still shocked that it released in this current state that it's in. That's really about it. It's not looking great for the MCU going forward here. I don't know how they bounce back. I don't know what direction they even take the MCU anymore. But I guess we'll just have to see. That's it. See ya. You hear about the New Warriors. What's that? It's like if someone made Section 8 unironically. What is that? It's a fictional superhero team appearing in American comic books published by Marvel. Oh, is this the thing that had the, Oh, no, it's not. You guys remember when they tried to launch that new Marvel comic, like, 4 years ago? And it was the worst superheroes ever. One of them was a super stink guy. Like, his whole thing was, like, he's stinky and you can smell him from a long distance or some shit. That's what it was. Internet gas. That's what it was. It was the Internet Gas Man. Yeah. Was that the New Warriors? I can't tell. There's like no info on New Warriors. It is the New Warriors. Yeah, I recognize Internet Gas Man. He's the one right up in front. Yeah, he's the Internet Gas guy. And the Parasite live action trailer was fire. Oh, I know Sickles. That was actually a really good school. I had a few friends that went there. Yeah. I didn't remember it was called New Warriors. It died before it ever even lived. They aborted it. Wasn't there an STD hero? Yeah, how about we just look it up again? I don't remember. I just remember Internet Gas Man. Let's see. It was outrageous. Like, the heroes had the worst powers ever. Oh, it looks like they actually did get a few volumes out. Oh, here we go. Firestar? Who's this? I don't remember them. That seems like an actual character. Night Thrasher? This is another real character. Oh, here we go. Oh my god, there's a lot. Where's like the ones they made for this? These are the old New Warrior heroes. So then how can I find the new ones? I think it's under the New Warriors 2020 canceled. Oh, it's a totally different entry. Because this is just like the section going over it. I just want to see which ones came with it. Oh, here we go. Screen time, Snowflake, safe space. That's right. B negative and Trailblazer. Safe space is such a good name for a fucking hero. Hindsight lad. What? Wait, what is this? Wait, what is their power? What do they do? Hindsight possesses no superhuman abilities. Cool. Though Turbo offered to share her costume with him after her previous partner died, this was never explored. So what do they do? What does he do? His research capabilities most often came into play as an associate and later member of the Warriors, including identifying potential additions to the Warriors' ranks when Sphinx had dispersed the original membership. So he's what, a talent scout? What the fuck is this? That's not even one of the new characters from the fucking safe space and the crew. They're not even listed here. Am I the biggest loser on the beach? Where are they? Here's Turbo. There's 2 Turbos. Yeah, they're not listed here. Just search Internet Gas Man Marvel. The first link by Marvel has the official descriptions. Okay, well, it shouldn't come down to that. Here, how about this? Does it come up if I just do this since we know their name? Oh, here we go. Screen Time! That was his name. The meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas. Now he can see augmented reality in real-time maps and can instantly Google any fact. Does this make him effectively a genius? He sure acts like it does. You know who else can instantly Google any fact? Every human being on the planet with a phone. It's so cool. What the fuck is internet gas? I remember I made a video on this back in 2020 when this was announced. It is crazy. Oh, and I forgot, Safe Space had a sibling, Safe Space and Snowflake. Which just sounds like they're insulting people. I wanted to have teen characters who felt as now as the New Warriors did in 1990, explains Kibblesmith. New Warriors have been his zeitgeist characters from the beginning. You get edgy skateboarding Night Thrasher in the 90s, reality TV team in the 2000s, and now in 2020 we have New Warriors who have never grown up without the internet and one character who appears to essentially live inside it. The word screen time is only ever used in sort of a restrictive sense, and because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So screen time, we like the idea that he has infinite screen time. Okay. It's not exactly like a label that you get put with. Screen time. I guess I could have just called him like mod, like Reddit mod, loser. I don't know. It's not really like a label. You wouldn't really be fighting against screen time. What did Snowflake and Safe Space do? What were their powers? Psychic twins. All twins are psychic, but we're psychic-er. Snowflake, a cryokinetic, can materialize snowflake-shaped shuriken projectiles. In Safe Space can materialize pink force fields, but he can't inhabit them himself. The reflex only works if he's protecting others. They're hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, and they can see their superheroics as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. They're probably streaming this. This is bringing back all the memories when this was first announced. B negative. Thanks for the 5 gift subs. City. Appreciate that.
A teen living vampire exposed to Michael Morbius's blood as a child in a rogue but life-saving medical procedure. He ages like a regular kid but has all the abilities of Morbius. He's also obsessed with the music and attitude of classic long past decades like the 90s and 2000s. The word vampire and the world is a vampire, and so am I. B negative is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume, from Michael Morbius. Now he has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers. Okay, so he's just a vampire. It's just a little Morbius. Trailblazer. A regular kid scooped up in the world of teenage superheroing. Her magic backpack is actually a pocket dimension with seemingly infinite space from which she can pull out useful or random objects. It's not always under her control. She claims to get her power from God, but not the God you're thinking of. She's a group home and foster kid who is volunteering at a senior center when this mysterious threat shows up and Night Thrasher runs to the rescue. And because she helps him, she ends up in the crosshairs of this new outlawed law. So her power is just having a magic backpack like Hermione Granger, but she can't control what comes out of it. That feels entirely useless. It's all just pure RNG. And yeah, I know, Omni, we talked about it. And hey, Goofus. I know, Cloud. Dora, but worse. Yeah. But that was the New Warriors concept. I'm pretty sure they never actually released an issue. Yeah, R.I.P. Appreciate it, Flex. It has to be satire. No, it's not. It's not. That's what I thought at first, too, because it actually just sounds insulting more than anything. But it's real.
It's really rare these days for a promotional piece or a promotional trailer to really get me excited or just blow me away in general, but today that phenomenon happened. I straight blew a load when I saw this promotional piece for SuperGirl on CW. This whole thing just looks like a project put on by a 7th grade middle school's arts and crafts department. I'm gonna let the whole thing play first of all, and then we'll go back and analyze it scene by scene. And keep in mind, they are using this as the actual promotional piece to get you interested in the show.
The ones you love turn their back on you. That's pain. But you'll see when you suffer the way you made me suffer. You can't touch me without hurting yourself.
That's why he brought me.
We came prepared.
You can't intercept any of us now.
Don't be so sure.
Agent Blake? John, now!
Dark.
Now, if that full-throttle, high-octane, nuts-to-butts action does not have you on the edge of your seat, well then I just don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. Now, I've never seen SuperGirl. I know nothing about the character, I know nothing about the show. But you bet your sweet little asshole I'm about to learn, because this shit makes me want to dive in with both feet.
The ones you love turn their back on you. That's pain.
Now, I thought it'd be fun to go back to the trailer and analyze it scene by scene. So it starts with Dragon Ball Evolution's Piccolo saying some super emo shit. Oh, you don't know the real meaning of pain. My family's turned their back on me, and now I listen to Pierce the Veil in the dark while writing in my diary. Ooh.
But you'll see when you suffer the way you made me suffer. You can't touch me with...
Yeah, this shit here just looks like a cutscene straight out of Mortal Kombat 4 on the Nintendo 64. It looks like a Halloween trick-or-treater standing in front of a green screen while a shitty YouTuber tried to very haphazardly edit them into a scene for a skit they were making in 2009. Also, I'm gonna critique the costuming here. It's not just shitty special effects, literally everything in this scene is fucking awful. The villain just looks super fucking goofy. He looks like a school shooter from outer space. His fucking stupid cape looks like a shag carpet dipped in motor oil. It's just top to bottom a horrible villain design. And it really does just look like a stock 3D 3D asset that they decided to copy and paste onto the show here. It just looks low quality. But you know what's not low quality? The streams I do at twitch.tv/moistcritical. Come check that shit out, baby.
Without hurting yourself.
That's why he brought me.
There's more cuts in this than there is in most Liam Neeson movies. The shit's jarring and disorienting. But from the split second of subliminal images I could pick up on, I was able to deduce that SuperGirl was disguising herself as a construction worker, and then she deactivated her cloaking device to deliver a justice fist directly to the left cheek of the evil Cyberman as he was yanked back via cord. Oftentimes when you see cord acrobatics and shit in movies, they try and hide that it's a cord, but here it's that, like, they kind of embrace it. There's no weight to the punch, but disregarding the punch and the lack of physics in the show, why did the construction worker disguise work in the first place? The supervillain is monologuing in front of one of the main characters in what seems to be an isolated area, but for some reason he lets a construction worker in the front row seat to hear his evil plans. Why? I mean, you know, ideally you would want no one to hear your evil plans unless you've been caught. So why is he just letting some rogue construction worker sit there and listen? Turns out it's Supergirl and she punches him, but still, his planning makes no sense. He would have killed that construction worker or very politely asked him to leave, but he did neither of those things.
We came prepared.
You can't intercept any of us now.
Don't be so sure.
Agent Blake?
Now this Power Rangers battle is really starting to heat up here. There's a lot to digest. All of a sudden you got the fucking Avengers portaling in out of nowhere, entering this corporeal dimension, and now they're about to arrest the guy. One girl brags about how he can no longer intercept them, but then he does intercept the football pass and he mind controls that other girl and she shoots at them. But now I have to wonder if this is all like clipped up out of context and mashed together in this phase montage for the show, or if this is the actual tempo and the actual speed the show goes at, because if so, what the fuck were the Galactic Police plan here? We're gonna try and arrest the man with mind control. Hopefully he won't try and mind control us. Fuck. He mind controlled Beth. Like, you know, they didn't come here with any protection. They didn't have Magneto's helmet on to prevent anything like this. They just came here raw and no rubber, and then one of them gets mind controlled. It's just I'm a little confused. I imagine maybe in the show it'll make a little more sense, but as it stands right now for promoting this, it leaves a lot of questions.
John, now!
Supergirl obviously intercepts the bullet, and then she fires a laser beam at her friend, and I have to wonder how that didn't split her in half, because she's supposed to be the equivalent of Superman or be stronger than Superman, and for some reason her laser just kind of love taps the gun out of her hand as kind of just like an inconvenience, more like a wasp sting than a fucking eye laser. But she disarms her friend, and then all of a sudden the main guy we saw in the beginning fires like a Ghostbusters proton beam at our main villain, who then makes himself intangible, fucking Naruto Toby style, and then fades away by throwing some kind of portal device underneath him. I'm really not sure. But either way, this display of highly talented special effects departments coupled with incredible storytelling and acting, I imagine will lead to one of my favorite shows on CW. And trust me, CW's got some real good bangers when it comes to shit television. This may take the cake. I'm excited to start watching, and hats off to the Supergirl CW promotional team, because this worked like a fucking charm. That's it. See ya. This could be the most controversial video I've made since the time I debated bone-in versus boneless chicken wings, or I could be completely wrong here hitting the crack pipe, and it might just be an extremely cold, stale take. I'm really not sure. Could go either way. I'm just super tired of superhero content. Marvel shows, Marvel DC movies, I just don't get excited for them anymore. Superhero fatigue, I think, is the term a lot of people use now, which I think is underselling it, because it's not just being worn out from so much of it, it's being genuinely put off because so much of it's being shoved down your throat. It's more of a soreness from being face-fucked by superheroes for so long now. Marvel just unveiled like 6,000 new shows and movies on the horizon here, and I've been asked my opinion on each and every one of them. It's just exhausting, because it's like being asked to rate every individual noodle in a bowl of spaghetti. I'm gonna rate them all pretty much the same, because they all taste the same. Now I want to be clear before people get too upset and flipping over their chair in a fit of rage and anger. There's nothing wrong with liking superhero content. Nothing at all. In fact, I still do enjoy watching it in the moment, like I have fun watching them, but it's not like I get excited. But there's nothing wrong with being excited either. You can have a completely different opinion from me. It's just I feel like everything for superhero content is pretty much the same these days. And I think it's important I define exactly what I mean here. I'm talking entirely about Marvel and DC. I love The Boys and I loved Invincible, and those are both two superhero shows. But they're very different from the Marvel DC formula. Very, very, very far removed from those two. To give you an example, every time Marvel or DC drops a new trailer for a show or movie, I'm always asked on stream to watch it and give my opinion on it, and I always draw the same conclusion, that it was a pretty generic trailer that followed the same formula that they've been using for the last decade. And to go even further, when I watched the Black Adam trailer on stream, I started to guess upcoming lines correctly, even though I had never seen the trailer before.
You can be the destroyer of this world,
Or the savior.
or you can be its savior.
What a guess.
The world needed a hero.
It got me.
Instead, it got
Oh, I'm nuts! I'm nuts! Let's go! God, this is so fucking generic. It doesn't take a galaxy brain intellect here to piece together what the next lines were going to be. This wasn't exactly like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2 with, next you're going to say this, and it'd be really impressive. I think these were pretty predictable lines that most people could have seen coming, because all superhero movies basically have the same bones these days. They follow very similar structure. Every character, again, follows very similar patterns where they're always making jokes and quipping with one another, and these lines in the trailers are always very similar. I have a feeling they're all written by the same team. They just like outsource it to the superhero trailer department because they always pretty much play out the exact same. And again, there's nothing wrong with liking that either. I enjoy superhero movies as well. I have fun watching them, I leave happy, it feels good, and that's as far as it goes. There's nothing wrong with it being that level of entertainment, but it's getting to a point where I'm just really tired of seeing the same thing every time, so now I'm not really leaving happy, I'm leaving bored. Like with Thor, Love and Thunder. It's not a bad movie, like none of the superhero movies or shows are like actually shit, like dog shit. There's just so many of them now, and it's hard to care. It also just seems completely aimless, like there's no goal for these movies anymore. In the beginning, it always tied back into like the Avengers and Thanos and all of that, which was cool, it gave it an overarching purpose. But now they've introduced like a million fucking characters into the mega mix here. They threw like 20,000 ingredients into a stew, and it's just an overload that you can't appreciate, or at least I can't. Again, this is just about my personal opinion on it. I'm just pretty tired of seeing so much superhero shit, and I do watch all of it still. It's not like I'm boycotting or anything. I still do indulge and watch all of it, except for the shows. I cannot finish the shows. The only show I've actually been able to watch start to finish is Loki. It's the only one I've enjoyed. All of the other ones I've dropped after like 3 episodes. They're so fucking boring, and they're just always the same goddamn thing. I'm watching carbon copies of one another, like just clones. I feel like I'm taking absolute crazy pills here, getting hit by like an insanity beam from space. It really just seems every show for Marvel follows the exact same formula, as well as the movies. I liked the new Doctor Strange, even though a lot of people didn't. I had fun with it, but it's a movie I haven't thought about since finishing the viewing. It's not like I forget that I watched them. Like, I have fun in the moment, and then it's immediately erased from my memory like the Men in Black just kicked down my door to take it out with a neuralizer. It's movies that are just fun to shove some popcorn in your face and enjoy like 2-hour ride, but that's about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to its shows and its movies, I just feel like all of the superhero content follows the exact same formula. Every character is pretty much exactly the same except for their powers. They're always constantly quipping, making short little jokes with one another, undercutting the serious moments with humor at every step. It's just hard to like get invested when you know exactly how all of these are going to play out. It's also just hard to care when it seems like there's no goal. One thing that really helped with Marvel in particular is all of it tied into the Avengers and getting to that in-game situation. Like, all of it had a big purpose, which I feel like it's completely lacking now. Like, I didn't even realize we were in phase 4 or phase 5, and now we're moving into phase 6 or some shit. Like, none of this has any meaning to me. It's all completely worthless nonsense. Phase 6 now? Like, who the fuck cares? What happened in phase 4 or 5? Like, yeah, there were some good movies there that I enjoyed, but do they tie into each other? Is there an actual goal? I have no clue. And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be tie-ins. It'd be fine if they're their own standalone things, but if they were actually unique with an interesting identity, but they're not. They don't tie in, yet they still follow the exact same formula. I don't know, it seems completely aimless. They're just always making as much superhero shit as possible, just going purely for the big quantity play. And it's working. Like, I know they're all still doing well, but I have to wonder how much longer they can continue to milk this dry tit. I can't imagine I'm alone here. I know there is a lot of people experiencing superhero fatigue, but I just don't know how big it is. Now, one other thing I'd like to at least bring up here in reference to all this is that this Marvel/DC superhero formula is something that's really infected a lot of other movies and shows because they're trying to emulate that same formula. To give you an example, the new Dungeons & Dragons movie coming out, they dropped the trailer. I felt like I was watching a Marvel trailer. They took all of the same beats that the superhero movies and shows do and translated it to D&D. So they basically just took a Marvel movie and gave it a D&D skin. At least that's what the trailer leads me to believe. Every character is doing the same shit they do in Marvel. They're constantly making jokes, they're quipping, everyone's so quirky. The writing feels exactly the same. The trailer feels exactly the same. They also get some of the Dungeons and Dragons shit wrong, as I understand it. I'm not a huge D&D guy, I only have very limited experience with campaigns. But they're just very much going for that big spectacle stuff that Marvel's known for while putting jokes into it at every single step. And I'm just so tired of it. Like, not every character needs to be Tony Stark. This all started because Tony Stark was such a popular character, and he had great writing. He had great jokes, he had great lines, but he was really the only one doing those jokes and those lines in that movie initially. And going forward, they started to, like, kind of integrate that same personality trait to all of their other characters. Thor, I do think, started as like goofy jokes and stuff like that, so I wouldn't necessarily say that was influenced there. But bringing it forward into every other character, they kept taking little elements of that and putting it into those characters where it didn't need to be. In fact, I think it detracts from it. Not every character should be joking all the time. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's too much. And just in general, too much of superheroes overall. I really think they need to dial it back a little bit and give themselves a little more time to let it cook in the oven and deliver something more tasty, something better than what we're currently getting, because it feels like it's just written by a bot now. A bot that knows the formula and keeps churning it out as quickly as possible for maximum turnaround and profit. I'm just a little over it, and I wanted to share my opinion on it because so many new shows and movies have been announced for superheroes that I keep getting asked about, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not like looking forward to watching them. I'm sure I will watch them and at least have a decent time. Like, it's not like a waste of time to watch them, but it's not like I'm eagerly, biting at my nails waiting for it either. It's something that I'll watch for the sake of a moist meter, but past that, it's not like I'm excited for the content coming up, because I feel like I know exactly what we're going to get, and it's just something that I'm tired of getting. And anyway, that's about it. So yeah.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're looking at Dark Phoenix, the newest X-Men movie following the massive stinker that was X-Men Apocalypse. This movie's not a whole lot better. Is it a great movie? No. Is it worth 20% on Rotten Tomatoes? No, it's not an abominable, terrible piece of shit or anything like that. It's just this underwhelming, forgettable movie. It's just not a whole lot of great things going for it, but it's not the worst X-Men movie either. It's a movie that you'll go there, you won't be overly entertained where you're shoving popcorn in your face on the edge of your seat ready to ejaculate, nor will you be falling asleep with your eyes open watching it. You'll walk out of the theater and then kind of just forget all about it. It's tough because they wanted to follow the Dark Phoenix story, which is a hard source material to adapt. It'd be a lot, and it was never going to get close, and it doesn't get close. The whole movie feels extremely uninspired and everyone going through the motions like, hey guys, we gotta shoot something. Can you come on to set? We'll just make it up as we go. Who gives a fuck? The script is awful. The dialogue's the most cliche, generic shit ever. Charles is showing you your past. I will show you your future. And then they even use the most overused fucking line in all of movies. Your emotions make you weak. No, they make me strong. Verbatim, that's one of the biggest lines in the movie. It's just awful. It's really fucking bad. Very phoned in. Hans Zimmer does the score for this movie, and even the score is lazy and uninspired. I didn't care for it at all, and that's Hans fucking Zimmer. That's like the Jesus Christ of music. He must not have cared either. No one really seemed to, save for a couple of good scenes with good performances from Sophie Turner and Michael Fassbender. They did seem to put some passion into some of their scenes, other scenes not so much, but it's hard with a script like what they were given, that piece of dog shit. But there is some good scenes in the movie. I think they do a good job of displaying the X-Men's powers in a fun way occasionally. Nightcrawler shines like a motherfucker in this movie. And the final fight on the train, I think, is the best in all of the modern X-Men movies. The whole entire fucking train fight was nice. Every X-Men had their own time in the spotlight. So I enjoyed that, but overall the movie's just uninteresting and boring, with almost no character development. The characters start one way, and then they all finish the exact same way, except Jean's a little more powerful. It's just not good. And the villains in this movie are probably the worst in any superhero movie I've ever seen. They don't even give the main villain a name that I remember. I'm almost positive they didn't give her a name unless her name was like a series of grunts, because there is just absolutely nothing going on with the villains. They have no drive, personality, dimensions to them. Honestly, every villain in this movie could have been played by a mannequin, and you would get the same emotional response and the same attachment or investment in the characters, or care about them the same amount. I cared more about watching a scene that had a piece of gum on the concrete than I did about the villains. There was more character in that gum. The main villain is a very talented actress, played by a talented actress. I'm not calling her a villain, although her performance here was criminally shit. It's played by a talented actress whose entire range that she had to go through here was... That's all she had to do. I can fucking do that. Let me play the main villain. You don't even have to pay me very much. I'll do it for the fucking love of the sport, just to get on the big screen. It was just an underwhelming, horrible attempt at villains. And their motivation is the most cliche shit in the world as well. They want to come to Earth and take it over. Spoiler alert, sorry, I didn't want to ruin it for you guys, but it's that bad. It's genuinely that bad. It's like a storyline I would come up with playing with my action figures on the side of the bathtub as a kid. It's just very lazy. Very, very lazy, uninspired, boring, and that leads the audience to feel the same way. So plugging this shit into the moist meter, I'm giving the new X-Men movie Dark Phoenix a 30%, and I'm giving it a 30 because that fight scene at the end really is very nice. Visually, they do a great job with the X-Men's power. I have to fucking defend a low score because I think most people are thinking it's probably deserving lower or maybe higher, I don't know. But the thing is, there are good moments. There are moments where I can see someone wanted to try, whether it be the actors in some good scenes. There's even some good scenes between the Beast and Charles Xavier. There's a lot going on sometimes, and then other times it's just bad high school theater performances where nobody really cares, including the writers and production team. Not great, not the worst X-Men movie. There was potential, there was at points an attempt with good scenes. Probably not worth seeing though. That's it. See ya.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome back to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at Wonder Woman 1984. I actually really liked the original Wonder Woman and thought it was one of DCU's better movies, especially amid all the dog shit they were pumping out at the time. They even went on a little bit of a streak there because Aquaman also turned out to be decent. But with Wonder Woman 1984, I feel like they've gone right back to the dog shit diaper because it's not very good. I'm going to go ahead and get the compliments out of the way right now because there's only a couple of them for this movie. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman continues to be exceptional in the role, and I think with the emotional scenes that she hits in this movie, she hits them even better than she ever has. I think she does a really great job with the character, and I think Pedro Pascal is an incredible villain. I think he's great. I'm also just a huge fan of his, and he does great in this role, and also the villain is pretty interesting with a cool gimmick. He's not just like some superpowered fucking meatball of a man that ends in a climactic boss battle where they're just like slapping each other around. It's actually a pretty interesting gimmick. That's really where my compliments end for this movie, because everything else about it I just think was a huge step back from the original. First of all, it's way too long. It's 2.5 hours, and it feels like it's 5 hours long. I felt like I was in some kind of fucking hyperbolic time chamber. It was miserably long for no reason. Past the initial opening action, there's 70 minutes where almost nothing happens except building characters slowly and uninterestingly. I'll get into that in a minute. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is just a slog. It tries to cram a ton of fucking things in here for no reason, and they don't really mesh very well together. So the best part about the movie visually is the intro, when they're doing this Olympic Games event when Diana was a child. It looks great, it sounds great thanks to the score from Hans Zimmer, and it's probably the most interesting visual point of the film, although it doesn't really do anything. All of the Olympic Games that happen in the beginning, which is like 10 minutes worth, they don't play any fucking role in the movie at all except for one thing, where they say, hey Diana, honesty's good. That's really like the whole message is, being honest is pretty good. Felt like I was watching like some kind of fucking Teletubbies thing or like Boo-Bahs on Nick Jr. It was a really weird message to drive home, and especially to give it like a 10-minute Olympic Games thing just to say, hey, Diana, try honesty. It's just kind of silly. But visually, it's the best part of the movie, because after that, the CGI and everything falls apart. It looks like shit half the time. Like when Diana's running, it looks like a malfunction in a video game cutscene. It looks like some Cyberpunk 2077 glitches. The CGI is rough. I'm not exaggerating. When she's running, it looks like she's floating, or like a poltergeist event. It looks like when Google tried to teach AI how to walk for the first time, and it came up with like these weird fucking strides. It's weird. The CGI is really bad in a lot of points. And the first mall scene, like the first bit of action this movie really has, is terrible. It's like a cheesy 1960s Adam West Batman thing. I don't know if they were going for that vibe, but she stops this mall robbery where these like cartoonishly silly bad guys are like planning a heist, and they get some shit, and then one of them gets caught, so he's dangling a girl over a ledge. He's gonna drop the girl because he doesn't want to go back to jail, as if somehow killing a child is gonna make him avoid jail time. I don't really get it. But then Wonder Woman saves the day, and it's the cheesiest shit of all time. It looks terrible. Everyone's like on wires, and they're being like pushed and pulled around. It's not good at all. It reminded me of like a scene from Jingle All the Way, like Turbo Man coming to save the day. It was very dumb, and I definitely thought that was going to be the tone of the movie from there on. But it doesn't. It's not. It's really disjointed from everything else, because after that it's just a completely slowed down character piece where it's kind of just Diana and Kristen Wiig talking for a long time. And I don't think Kristen Wiig is a bad actress or anything, but she is not good in this movie. She's good at points in the movie, but her character, they really tried to build it and they were just unsuccessful. And also in the beginning, like the first 20 scenes with Kristen Wiig, she's wearing these glasses that are reflecting the green screen off her glasses. It was extremely distracting because every time you see Kristen Wiig in a scene, you see the green screen too. I honestly don't know how they missed that because it is glaring. It was like the only thing I could focus on when I saw Kristen Wiig. I'd like tune out everything else and I'd just focus on the fucking green screen in her glasses. It was wild how that stayed in the final cut here. And also surprising how few people seem to have noticed that. But again, it's not really a problem with Kristen Wiig's acting. I think she does fine in the role. It's just the character really wasn't given enough room to be interesting. Like, she has 2 scenes where she's like awkward and, I'm a nobody, but I want to be somebody. And then they introduce the plot device, which is a wishing stone. So, I wish I was somebody. Of course, the whole movie is the cliche, be careful what you wish for thing. So in the next scene, she's like super badass and a real powerful somebody. And it's just very silly. It goes like 3 scenes where she's awkward, and then she's immediately not awkward anymore. So it's not like they really built anything up, at least not successfully. I really don't even see why they included her in here, except for the fact that she becomes super-powered somebody. And I guess that's the only thing they wanted, so that way there could be like a potential showdown or something. I don't know why they wouldn't just focus on Pedro Pascal, because he's the actual like interesting villain of the movie. I just don't actually see what role Barbara Minerva played in this, the character played by Kristen Wiig, except for the fact that they wanted some kind of big showdown at the end, and you can't really do that with Pedro Pascal, just given how he is as a villain. It wouldn't work, and I think they wanted to have some kind of CGI showdown, which is weird, because that's definitely the weakest part of the movie, is their visuals. And to get around this, in the final like fight scene, which is all CGI, they have it take place at night where you can hardly fucking see anything because it is absolutely atrocious. When the light does accidentally hit their CGI characters towards the end, man does it look bad. so I don't even know why they bothered to include the character in there. They could have just focused on the actual villain who is actually interesting, Pedro Pascal. They had 2.5 hours, and it felt like they did nothing but wipe their ass with that time. I did enjoy the back and forth between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot. I think they had good chemistry, and I did like some of the more wholesome scenes. And it's not like the worst movie ever made, but it is actually just a significant step backwards since the first Wonder Woman in 2017. I don't know what happened or even what they were really going for in this movie, because it's super light on action, and all of the action is much smaller. Like in Wonder Woman, you'd have like full fucking war fights. In Wonder Woman 1984, all of the fights happen in singular rooms. The first one happens in a small area of a mall. The next action scene happens on a small piece of a highway in the desert. The next action scene happens in a small room in a very notable building. And then the last one happens on a single ledge overlooking a small little puddle of water. So all of the action is significantly smaller and more contained. There's significantly less action. The pacing is pretty fucking garbage in this movie. The emotional scenes with characters aren't as explored as it was in 2017's Wonder Woman. Everything in Wonder Woman 1984 is worse than the original. It's really kind of inarguable. The only thing that is better is Gal Gadot's performance when it comes to those small emotional moments. I think she does a great job with her acting, and I do think Pedro Pascal does a great job with his character, but those are really the only two highlights of this movie. It's just not that good. So, plugging Wonder Woman 1984 into the moist meter, I'm giving it a 40%. It seems the DC headquarters has been hit with some kind of gas attack by the Joker that has turned them all back into the talentless creators they were in 2016 with shit like the Suicide Squad, because this movie is just not good. I thought they had finally started to find their footing with their movies when it came to like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam even. Like they had some good movies coming out of the pipeline, but something must have gone awry, because this one really just wasn't good. It's carried entirely by the performance of Gal Gadot and Pedro Pascal, and there's a few cool moments occasionally in the movie, but they're extremely rare and I can count them on one hand. It's not a good movie. That's about it. So yeah.
Hey. Huge congratulations to you, the viewer, because you're about to witness some history. You will always remember this moment as one of the most unenthusiastic moist meters and probably one of the shortest moist meters I've ever made. Aquaman 2, and the Lost Kingdom. More like Aquaman Snooze and the Lost Time, because this is truly a waste of time and it's very difficult to stay awake for this movie. I really don't have many positive things to say about this movie. I actually liked the first Aquaman, shockingly. Like, I went into it not expecting much, but ended up really enjoying the first Aquaman. So I was kind of expecting this one to be fun, though the initial screenings were labeled as disastrous or unreleasable, and everyone was just insulting it, so I stopped having high expectations. But I really didn't expect it to turn out like this. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's not even the worst DC Universe movie I've seen. But it's one of the most boring. It is, I'm not kidding, hard to stay awake for it. I dozed off twice, and one of them was during like this big fight moment, because it's so clear nobody really tried at all. It was clear from like the very first 20 minutes worth of this film's opening. No one's heart was in this film at all. This was a movie that was pumped out just because it was part of the release schedule, so they were obligated to finish it and just shit this one out onto the market. So if no one in it cares, why the fuck am I gonna care? Plus, it doesn't have any real place in the DCU. This is the funeral for the DCU, and man, what a sad wet fart whimper it goes out on. As I understand it, they're doing an entirely new rebooted DCU, and this is the last remnant of the old guard, the ancient ways. And no one's going to remember this movie. Unless, of course, you're trying to remember some of the best sleep you ever got in a movie theater, because watching this is like taking NyQuil. It is visual sleep aid. So let's go ahead and get into it. First and foremost, the narrative is outrageously disjointed. The movie's 2 hours long, but it felt like it needed another hour and a half just to put together a plot that works, that fits, because it feels like it just constantly tried to speedrun things. Arthur, Aquaman, would teleport everywhere he needed to go. There was no real journey or anything. He's just like, I need to go find my brother. And then he's already there, like, beating some ass and freeing his brother. He's like, all right, good. It's like, well, how did you get there? Like, this man just has instant transmission like Goku here. There's just, things happen for the sake of plot convenience. Things just happen. And it's so unfulfilling, and especially because the performances from everyone are so flat. And it's not even the acting. I want to make it clear. I don't even think the acting is bad. It's the dialogue. The dialogue is so AI generated and bland that it makes all of the characters, no matter how hard they try, bland and boring. To give you an example, a truly devastating moment happens in the plot, one that's absolutely going to put tears in the eyes of everyone in the audience watching this. Something bad happens to Aquaman's family, and since this is a movie mainly about Aquaman's family, a lot of times it's spent like a buddy cop film with his brother. It's a movie about his family, and when this scene happens, I shit you not, I think it's five cuts, and what it is they go through all of Aquaman's closest friends and family, and they go, no, 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 like cutting between each one of them just saying no. It's fucking laughable. It is so silly. I really don't know why they would have put that in the final cut, and I think it's just scrambling to have put something out. This movie was apparently a victim of tons and tons of reshoots, and I really think you can feel that. For example, there were the rumors about Amber Heard's role in this film being cut down, and I definitely think that's the case. I don't think this is what the film was originally supposed to be. Since it's a movie about Aquaman's family, you would expect Amber Heard, who played a huge role in the first one, to have a big role in this one. But she doesn't. She's sidelined. They put her on the bench. I think she only has like 5 total scenes or something maybe, and I could probably count the amount of dialogue she has on one hand. She doesn't say or do anything in this film, even though it's all about Aquaman's family, so it's clear there were a lot of reshoots here in order to like get her role less, and then they didn't know how to fill in the blanks, so then they haphazardly threw other things together and probably had to do more reshoots, which led to like even more emotionless moments throughout. The whole thing just feels like a mess. And even visually, I thought this one would probably be good visually, even though DCU's got a reputation for having bad CGI. I thought the first Aquaman had a couple of wonky CGI moments, but overall is one of the better looking DCU movies. This one goes right back into the old ways, and there are some terrible CGI moments. And for some reason, half of the scenes just have the characters standing still. Like, they're not doing things half the time. I don't even know how they can make it look bad. They're just not doing anything, and sometimes it'll still just visually look like shit. It's so weird how this one does everything wrong that the first one did right. Even the villain that I thought was just a surefire slam dunk easy because the villain's so fucking cool, they fumbled. Manta isn't nearly as cool in this movie as he was in the first one. And in fact, Manta, like, they make him look as though it's not even Manta. They give him a storyline that, you know, he wants revenge and all of that, but then they overwrite it with their goofy mumbo-jumbo about, like, the ancient evil from back in the day using the Orichalcum, which I will admit is a really cool name because it reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! With the seal of Orichalcos, but they should have just stuck with actual Manta being the main villain instead of being this puppet for the greater evil. Manta is so much more interesting than their stupid green wizard fishman. Like, no one cares about that guy, and even still, he doesn't do much. Like, they should have just had it be Manta as the main villain. He's so much cooler, and it would contrast so nicely with the theme of family, since Manta hates Aquaman for killing his father. That would be the perfect contrast to Aquaman's family dynamic and his family journey. And while that's kind of still present, it's executed so poorly because they have this completely disjointed narrative and they keep trying to shoehorn in this ancient evil with all this ancient technology, and somehow Manta has a whole army of people that know how to pilot all of it and use all of it for no reason that they ever explain. It's just such a mess. I'll go ahead and fish a few compliments out for the movie, though. There's a couple of scenes with Aquaman and his brother that I think were enjoyable. Like, just having them shoot the shit sometimes was pretty fun, mainly because Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson are just kind of charismatic, so when they're interacting with each other, it works. Like, that dynamic I thought was pretty decent, even though, again, all of that is just fucking blasted through super quickly. Like, you don't really see them bond, in my opinion. Like, they just happen to get to a point where all of a sudden they're tight, but they don't really earn that, especially given their history. They just end up there because they needed to for the plot. But when they are just, like, joking back and forth, it's pretty cute. Like, that's like, it's wholesome. And another nice thing I can say about the movie is there are a few good scenes. Like, their action is pretty enjoyable when it's there, and pretty much every good scene in the film has Manta in it.
there are some standout moments, and Manta is the one that leads those. Now, plugging Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in the Moist Meter, I'm going to give it a 35%. It's hard to care about a movie when no one who made it seems to care. Like I said, this really seems like something that they just threw together because they had to. They had a contract they had to fulfill, so they did it. There's no real passion behind it. There's no real story they want to tell. Like, there's just really nothing.
This episode of Moist Meter brought to you by Godslap. Issue 3 is out right now at godslapbook.com. You can find links below in the description. Go check it out.
Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at the new Shazam movie, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I mean, it's not great. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not very good. I don't know what to tell you. It really feels like DC's serving up Naruto filler for movies at the moment. This whole film felt so utterly worthless. I can't even like fully explain it without getting into spoilers, so I'm not going to, because I try and avoid spoilers to the best of my ability. But it feels like the stakes are super duper low, and it goes into the most cliche superhero film I may have ever seen. This feels like Marvel's first attempt at superhero films back in like early 2000s, but somehow this came out this year. Everything we've learned from superhero films over the last fucking 2 decades is thrown out the window for this one, and it falls back on the most generic shit ever. The villains are beyond bland and forgettable. They literally come out of nowhere and it's like, we're mad, we're gods, and you've made us mad because of this wizard that did this, and we're mad, so we're gonna destroy your world now. Maybe. But they're also just not powerful at all. They're not intimidating or strong. They had to have a little doodad, a little plot device gizmo that's able to instantly sap their power when they get shot by it. They literally have plot convenience darts that they can fire out of a staff. And when it hits them, it steals their power back and they just become normal kids again. Because if it was to be like an actual toe-to-toe fight, they'd lose, and it wouldn't even be close. One of the villain's powers is she can whisper in your ear and make you do things, but she can't even do that half the time. She only demonstrates this working twice. The other, 3 times she uses it, a child overcomes it every time. A literal kid. It's supposed to showcase the kid being strong, but really it just showcases that god being weak as fuck, where she can't even, mind control a child. So, and that's all she does. She doesn't even demonstrate, super strength or anything. All she can do is whisper, tell you little secrets, and, inception you. And that's it. And then, the main villain, she can control elements. But all she uses that for is to make a box hit Shazam at one point. Or throw a amalgamation of concrete and traffic cones at Shazam once. And then put up a barrier twice. It's it's all so unbelievably underwhelming. They're just not good villains at all. From a writing perspective, a motive perspective, power perspective, they're not cool. There's a dragon in the movie, and even the dragon's not cool. The dragon's so fucking weak. They hype up the dragon like it's the eater of worlds and all that, but we don't see it do anything at all that demonstrates it being anything more than just this flying nuisance like a mosquito. But anyway, I'm focusing on that a little too much. This is, at its core, a movie for children. In fact, the entire auditorium was filled with families and their kids that would cheer anytime anything at all happened with, jingling keys. I know Shazam, the first one, is very much a family film, but this one is, 10x the childishness of that. From its jokes to its actual plot and things that happen, this is very, very clearly geared towards a young audience. So that was a little disappointing. But even the shit that happens in this film is so goofily non-important that even the main characters, for the most part, don't take it even remotely seriously for even a second. It just never feels like there's any real peril. And I absolutely fucking hate that since this has gone so far back in time into superhero movies, it has this big clusterfuck of bad CGI monsters that get spawned in. Literally like some Power Rangers shit. Just like these monsters that get spawned in, they're super shitty. They don't do anything. They like kind of move around a little bit. And I think they kill like 2 civilians. Kill, I'm using loosely. They throw them like 2 feet in the air and it's presumed that that civilian got hurt. It's just not very good at anything. I think the actors do a great job with the material that they're forced to work with. Like the acting I actually thought was even like improved. In the first film, it didn't really feel like Shazam the adult was the kid. It was 2 separate characters. Here, they feel a lot more in line, which is clearly what they're going for, and they definitely did a better job of that. But he's not really the main character in this one. Freddy's really like the heart of this film and where most of the emotion comes from. And Freddy's actor does a great job, honestly. Like, Freddy's a pretty decent character. Probably the best character in the movie, honestly. Like, he does get a bit annoying, but that's also one of his main traits. Overall, it just feels like this movie served no purpose. It felt like they made it because they felt forced to. I would imagine initially Black Adam was supposed to play a role in this because fucking obviously it's Shazam and Black Adam, but The Rock wasn't really willing to play ball, so instead they had Black Adam be completely separate, which ended up tanking this film as well. So they had to fucking ham fist and cobble together this mess of a movie. And I'm calling it a mess, but it's not like it's fucking horrible or anything. It clearly knows that it's a movie for kids, and it leans into that, so I guess a lot of it's supposed to be something that you just give a pass to, but it's just not interesting at all. It really isn't. And I really hate a lot of the back and forth that happens, in particular in the middle act of this, where it's hard to talk about with spoilers, but there's a lot of back and forth with things getting taken and then getting taken back and then taken again and then taken back. It's just, I don't know. Not a lot of this movie worked for me. The movie was really at its best when it still had like elements of adventure, which were kind of in the beginning, where, for example, they went into a room that had a lot of doors leading to a lot of places. It was a cool little environment and a cool concept that wasn't really explored, but it was a cool idea, it was interesting. Then they go to a library with flying books and like this omniscient pen that can write down anything and answer any question you have. Those 2 things are cool, but you don't see a lot of that here. There's really just not a lot of magic in general, especially for something that involves a wizard and the powers being of magic origin and the villains having magic powers. It's crazy how not prominent the magic is in the film, which is a weird decision. But yeah, aside from a couple instances of a few scenes that I thought were done well, there just wasn't a whole lot I really liked about the movie. Plugging Shazam Fury of the Gods into the moist meter, I'm gonna have to give it a 40%. I really don't think it's horrible, and definitely I can see kids enjoying this movie. I heard kids enjoying this movie while at the theater. They were going fucking crazy anytime any kind of fucking fight or anything would happen, really. So I guess it might be a hit for a young audience, but I certainly wasn't in there pumping my fist at the film or anything, so that's really about it. As most of you know, we started our own comic book series called Godslap. Everyone who's read Godslap so far has unanimously agreed that it's the best comic ever produced, and Godslap is well on its way to becoming the biggest name in all of comics, overthrowing Marvel within the next 5 years, according to recent scientific projections that I'm pulling out of my ass. It's a passion project created by myself, Jackson, Danny, and Matt, and we brought in an industry veteran named Aubrey Sitterson to help write it with us, and we're extremely proud of what we've created. Issue 1 and 2 are already out, and Issue 3 came out today, as of right now. Issue 3 is available at godslapbook.com, and per usual, this is the standard cover, but we also have 2 limited edition variants, which will only exist until they're sold out, and they'll never be reprinted. So they're available at godslapbook.com. What's up, everybody? It's Critical. I know I'm a little tardy to the party with reviewing Suicide Squad. It's been out for a while. It's probably on VHS by now. But I just saw it and I really wanted to give my opinion of the movie since I'm a big fan of superhero movies and especially the DC universe, so I just really wanted to chime in here. Now, overall, I want to say it was a decent movie. It wasn't the best. It was okay. I enjoyed it. It wasn't great. I think Slipknot easily takes the #1 spot on my mental list of the absolute worst characters in movies. He was just so fucking awful and had no place in that movie. They didn't even try and make him seem cool. When they brought him on for the 30 seconds he was in the movie, they introduced him when they were doing all the cool introductions for the characters with their powers and what they're good at. When they brought Slipknot on, they said verbatim, he can climb anything. What the fuck? That's not cool at all. That's like, if I was in the Suicide Squad, there's Charlie over there. He can play the ukulele decently in any environment imaginable. There's just absolutely nothing interesting about that. I don't think anyone who saw the movie just recoiled when they heard that. Oh, holy fuck, he can climb anything, gripping their friend's legs. Whoa, did you hear that? Anything, he can climb it. What the fuck, just coming in their trousers? I don't think anyone thought that was cool. They gave him no backstory, nothing about who he is or what he did to even be a bad guy. And I don't even know what purpose they saw him fulfilling in the Suicide Squad. Oh shit, the bad guy's rappelling up this building at moderately fast speeds. Quick, Slipknot, hop on your harness there and run him down. You're our only hope. I just don't see the usefulness there. Luckily, he wasn't in the movie for very long. He immediately died, making his moderately fast getaway using his climbing abilities that are second to none, apparently. Got his head blown off. Another thing I really hated about the movie, absolutely despised, were the henchmen, I guess you can call them. I don't know. They looked like fucking swamp monsters. Can't even find a good picture of them. You couldn't really even see them in the movie. They looked like that enemy in The Last of Us that rips your fucking head off. I can't remember its name right now. It was just really shitty. It looked like Argus, that old watchful protector myth guy. Looks like the fucking Yu-Gi-Oh card, Thousand Eyes Restrict. It's just a stupid fucking character design and made absolutely no sense. The fucking barnacle beasts. Another thing I absolutely hate about the movie was Captain Boomerang. Absolutely fucking useless. Low budget Tom Hardy did absolutely nothing, didn't contribute shit, and that's just an insulting name really. If I was a bad guy, I would not want to be called Captain Boomerang. Makes me feel like an 8-year-old. No one would take me seriously at any type of villain meeting if I was trying to do business with someone. Who's this guy? It's Captain Boomerang. The fuck? It's Captain Boomerang. Sounds ridiculous. It's stupid. And his superpower is throwing a boomerang and it comes back to him. That's not a fucking superpower. That's what a boomerang is designed to do. He just happens to do it kind of decently. And he only does it twice in the movie. Nothing good comes of it. He does reconnaissance with it one time. But that same feat could have been accomplished with a much more reliable tool besides a fucking boomerang. And then he only kills 2 enemies in this entire movie. Only does one thing with action. Takes his knife and just drives it in the head of these coral reef demons or whatever the fuck these seaweed-looking, pubic hair-looking fucking abominations were in the movie. So yeah, he was useless. I hated that guy. So I also hated the big weapon that Enchantress was building. I've been spoiling the whole fucking movie, but the plot is horrible, so trust me, you're not missing anything. Enchantress builds this ridiculously Independence Day looking weapon type deal, and the way they stop it is they throw a bundle of dynamite in there, and Deadshot shoots it and blows it up. That's all it took to defeat this massive weapon that's supposed to destroy the world. Why did they even need the Suicide Squad in this case? Why didn't they just send a jet and bomb it? It would have been a lot more reliable and easier with a lot less casualties. Fuck, I could have gone in there and probably spit in the machine and blew it up. It was just so fragile and it just made no sense. It was a stupid ending, and the climactic battle with Enchantress at the end was also horrendous. She's this all-powerful witch and for some reason decides to fight the squad in hand-to-hand combat, just slapping their ass cheeks and giving their titties a wallop sometimes. That didn't make much sense. Also, the Joker wasn't horrible. I mean, a lot of the times he was on screen, it was just embarrassing to watch, but I guess it wasn't the worst performance in the world. I'm not really good at judging acting, but I don't know. I didn't like any of his scenes, but I can see why some people would. The thing I really didn't like most about the movie, though, was they made every character so boring. They didn't use their abilities to make them seem cool at all. For instance, Deadshot and his ability to never miss. The only thing he did to show that was a good power was when he ricocheted the bullet and killed the person in the very beginning. But after that, all he did was just stand still and shoot his gun at targets that were coming at him, or stationary targets. That's no different than just a normal soldier. And Harley Quinn uses a gun sometimes and a baseball bat on the coral reef scary things. Don't need to say anything about Captain Boomerang. I don't know who did the recruiting. Oh, she uses a baseball bat. We need her on the squad. Boomerang? Holy shit, get him in here. I feel like they are just not better than the alternative, which would be just about anything else with a gun. You could take a 90-year-old all-timers veteran on oxygen tank, give him a gun, he'd be more useful than those two. The only character I actually found interesting and fun to watch and also useful was Diablo, and they killed him in a shit way. He was straight tongue-punching some assholes towards the end of the movie, and then for some reason, his flame just went out. I guess he pissed himself or something and extinguished it, and then they killed him. It was dumb, but whatever. Yeah, overall, a lot wrong with the movie. A lot that I really didn't like about it, but it was not a miserable experience. I don't regret the money I spent to see it with my friend. It was fun, and it was a fun movie to watch. Just suspend your disbelief, but really, looking at the movie, I can see why a lot of people don't like it. It wasn't a great movie. DC really needs to step their shit up. That's pretty much the bottom line. So, in true movie critic fashion, I'll give this movie a rating. I give it about a Cerave out of Absolute Moisture. Because Cerave is that nice middle ground. It gives you a little bit of moisture, but it leaves a lot to be desired. Your skin still gets dry pretty quickly after when you use Cerave. And that's what happened with Suicide Squad. It got dry in pretty much from beginning to end, but it was okay. There was a little moisture there, so that's why I give it the Cerave. Yeah, that's it. So yeah.